Zoot suits, fold-up helmets, the pros, the camaraderie. It's all coming up as the second quarter gets started on the Legends of Alabama Football.
I feel like Gene Stalling was the next best thing to Coach Bryant. And I really think he motivated us well, and he put us in the right position to make plays, you know.
And there was some tough time. I mean, it wasn't all roses, obviously.
No, it wasn't always roses.
He's hard-headed, though.
Yes,
Stubborn.
he is.
We had a really good team in '89. Our offense probably had every SEC, led every SEC category, I think. And he come in the next year. He's going to implement his system. We had everybody returning, except for
One left
Marco Battle, I think, and Ben Strickland. Everybody coming back was like, please, Coach, just let us run the same offense. He going through his system, and he wound up winning the national championship. He would have won it a little earlier, but but he wound up doing it anyway.
Bobby, what kind of coach are you? Motivationally and so on?
I tell you, I've been up under some of the best. I played my college ball, of course, with Ray Perkins, who I thought was listening to the stories of Coach Bryant. Perkins was definitely a disciple of Coach Bryant. I mean, when you can hear the noise going on and everybody talking right before the meeting starts, and once that side door open, complete silence. Silence hits the floor. And I was able to play up on the Perkins and Curry and two great NFL coaches, Coach Schuler and Coach Dan Reeves. And I've tried to take a lot of that and take it with me with the Steel Dogs. And I'm tough, but yet I'm fair. And I always tend to try to motivate guys, not just to do the things on the field, but off the field as well. So I'm kind of like a combination of both tough and fair and understanding at times, but I consider myself to be closer to a Don Shula type coach.
Hey, Billy.
Well, that's pretty good.
No, I didn't say I was a Don Shula, but I'm trying to get there.
One thing about Bobby, though, he don't let you hear the end of the game speech, and he don't let you have any pizza. You get out the locker room after the game. I'm in the locker room one night after the game and get ready to talk to the guys at the end of the game, so they all these boxes of pizza, so I'm gonna slide over there and give me a couple of pieces of pizza. I go there and get the pizza box, hey, let me see you outside here for a minute. He said, you can come back in after I finish. By that time, all the pizza gone.
Billy, or as the guy called you before, Willie, how has the game changed over the years from what you've been able to see, you know, from your playing through family members playing to watching from the grandstand? How's this
you know,
game
we
changed?
played both ways when I was at Alabama, and 3 or 4 years after that, I started playing one way. We had to be in great shape, and he didn't like, Coach Bryant didn't like you to be too big. You know, he would give you a weight to have every year, and if you didn't make it weight, he wouldn't give you a uniform. Matter of fact, he kicked my brother off. He's 2 pounds overweight. Matter of fact, 2 days before I came out there, he kicked my brother off for being 2 pounds overweight. So we had to be in great shape because you played every down, covered every punt, every kick. And now they don't do that. Guys, you weigh 280, 290, 300 pounds and play because you don't play every snap. It's tough to play every down, cover kickoffs, punts, field goal to every team. He was on every team. And some get, I think I averaged 58 minutes when I was in college.
See, I got to hear that every day.
When I was your age...
But you know what? They didn't have those helmets like we had to wear. They could fold up their helmet and put it in the back pocket.
We didn't have any helmets. You didn't need any.
Did he really throw this stuff at you? He used to walk to school 4 miles and the whole bit?
Oh, in the snow.
In the snow, right.
In Tuscaloosa. No, he hitchhiked, is what he said.
Oh, God.
Well, Eli, that's one of the things I loved about this university. Coming here and Mr. Neighbors being around and you know, Leroy Jordans and those guys coming back in. And then I moved on to the NFL. you would have thought I played with, say, when I first played, the first time I played against Dwight or Marty, seeing Marty and Barry and guys, you know, when I played against a guy from Alabama, we always, that love or that togetherness or that camaraderie was there regardless. From the first day I played in the NFL till I walked away from the game. Bama, what's up, Bama? You know, I mean, that's the way it is now. You know, the hipness now in the game, but, you know, Crimson, you know, Roll Tide or, you know, things like that. I mean, that's what makes this group and seeing these guys, that's what makes it so special.
They never talked to him. Marty, the only thing that ever good happened to me from an Alabama player was I got saved from paying a fine. We had a Donnybrook against the Jets one year, and we had everybody was fighting and everything, and one of their crazy linebackers spit on my quarterback, and so there were a bunch of fights, and I'm flailing, and all of a sudden my feet are in the air, and I'm flailing like this, and I'm saying, oh, somebody's got me around the waist, and I'm off the ground. And I'm getting kind of worried, you know, and they're taking me to the Jets bench. I'm figuring I'm going to get really killed once I get over there. So I look around, and it's Marty. He picked me up and was toting me over there, and I'm sitting there, and he saved me from getting $2,000, but it did cross my mind after he had lifted me and taken me over there that I was going to have to play in front of him the rest of the game. After he had kind of ruined my psyche after he had done it.
John's the only offensive lineman that I've ever seen get an unnecessary roughness flag. We're playing them in New England, and we've got this, it's raining and misty, and I started to pull my hamstring a little bit in the fourth quarter, and we had this young rookie named Kenny Neal out of Iowa. Weighed about 147 pounds. John was kind of, you know, pissed off that afternoon anyway. So we threw in Kenny Neal. About 2 plays later, Kenny Neal comes running over. He's got his helmet turned sideways, looking out the nose piece, and he's looking at me. He goes, man, that's 73, man. He's trying to kill me. He goes, what do you want me to do? I said, get back in there. So I pushed him back out there. 3 plays go by, and you hear the referee going, unnecessary roughness, number 73 offense. Kenny Neal comes over. He goes, man, I can't take it. He goes, guy is going to kill me. I said, you only got 2 more minutes. Go ahead. But I think, you know, playing against John, playing against Dwight, it was truly a challenge. You know, it was a game that you respected because you knew that they were going to come at you every single play, and it was going to be a physical game.
My first year playing in the league, Dwight was still playing them, and my first time playing the Dolphins, and Bruce Smith, who, you know, one of the greatest professional football players to ever step on the field, I've never seen Bruce in the 9 years that I played with Bruce Smith intimidated by a player. And like the guys talk about John Hanna, to me, the older guys, that's the way Bruce Smith would talk about Dwight Stevenson. I mean, you knew who Dwight was before you got there. You paid attention, and Bruce would study, and he'd be up, and he'd nervous stomach and everything, worried about playing Dwight.
I still owe Bruce one, too. But this kind of thing, everybody want to add in that?
No, I was, they were talking about tradition here at Alabama.
Yeah.
But one thing about it, though, the camaraderie that we have for each other has always been like a brotherhood, fraternity type thing, and it's a lot of things went down in the dorm, but like they say in Cancun, what happens in Cancun stays in Cancun. So that's what happens with the dorm situation.
Which brings us to Coach Rutledge, who I didn't hear you whistling as you walked in, but nevertheless, I bet you if you sat down and just could write a no-holds-barred book, which you haven't done, but I mean, I bet you've got more stories probably than most anybody in the studio, huh?
Eli, can Barry and I leave now?
No, you guys stay for a rebuttal. You'll have your chance.
We're going to take the film.
I'm enjoying listening to the stories.
I bet.
Now, I played right beside Billy. I coached with Mal and Dude. When John talks about the coach coaching and keeping an eye up on the thing with Coach Bryant, I lived in the athletic dorm with David, you know, every one of them.
They've all got their hands over their faces, too.
That's when you were there, David, right?
I'm a player from 57 to retiring in 1996, I think that what we all have in common is that you knew at some time in your career you were going to get a gut check. He was going to check you out personally. He was going to see if you were going to pay the price or if you were going to quit. And you were subject, as a coach or a player, to get several. Because I think that's why Coach Bryant was so great. The humbleness, and then the way he treated each one of us individually.
Eli, you missed an important person in football, if I might interject, in Alabama football, and that's Jim Goosetree. Goosetree was a trainer here, and he was a great man, and Goosetree was a disciple of Coach Bryant. And I remember we were playing, you know, Bob had alluded to that Tennessee game, and it was about 120 degrees on the field that day, and I was a little wobbly going into that last series, and they scored, and Goosetree says, we need to eat the time up. So I said, you got to go one more series. I said, all right. So I go back out there, and I'm wobbly. And so anyway, I'm about to fall out, and they, instead of calling a timeout to get me off the field, Goosetree's going, John, here, John, come here, boy, come here, like a dang dog. And that, you know, Goosetree was one of a kind. You know, he kept Coach Bryant going.
He really was. And Coach Moore, I think we always felt for the position that you had on the football field during the game, meaning right next to Coach Bryant. But the other thing, Coach Goosetree would be back there kind of taking care of us and mending us, and we'd run a couple of plays, and they might not go as well as we'd like for them to. And Coach Goosetree, he speak up and said, Mal, we got more than one play in the playbook up there.
Yeah, he was always giving you a hard time.
Hey, I got a lot of advice, and, but I've told this several times. Coach Bryant would needle me a little bit about throwing. We didn't throw the ball a lot when we run the wishbone, and he liked misdirection stuff. He thought the wishbone was too much of a flow offense. You know, it was easy for the backside linebacker. He would call me in on Monday, and he'd say, man, we're making an All-American out of every linebacker we play. And he said, we need more counter options, misdirection, reverses, and we're playing Houston, University of Houston, when Bill Yeoman in the split back beer was at this height, you know, and we played out in Dennis Stadium and ended up winning the game, I think, like 38-28, but we'd scored, they had scored. We couldn't ever quite get away from them. And they punted in the fourth quarter, dead on our, about our 8-yard line, and I'm trying to get it off the goal line because we can still lose the game, call a play, and Coach Bryant's right by me. He said, God, man, the backside linebacker made the play, run a reverse. Yeah, I'm thinking, if run a reverse down here, it's either a big play or a big loss, no in between. Call another play, we pop it out for 10 or 15 yards, first down. He said, the backside linebacker is killing you. Run the reverse. And I call another play, another big game with the fullback. Now we're out about midfield, and it's 1st and 10. He grabbed my arm. I could tell when he meant what he said. You know? And we locked eyes. He said, run the reverse. So I went left, 36 load, wide reverse. We ride that fullback deal back to the wide receiver. I believe it was David Bailey coming around. A big OM, it was in the fourth quarter, a big OM for Houston was give out and didn't pursue, you know. He sees it. Comes up the field, we lose about 15 yards. They hit the ground right in front of Coach and I. And when we were both backing up, when I looked at him, he looked at me and he said, my head, I meant the other way. I've always said, you know, the head coach is just like a fan. Hell, when the play's over, we all know, you know.
Classic. I wonder how many folks know that kind of stuff goes on the sidelines.
I tell you what Jack was saying is so true too, and you know there's several things Coach always said about his teams, and someone else was talking about everybody was bigger, faster, better. But one thing Coach Bryant would say that his teams really, man for man, weren't as good or weren't worth a damn is what he would say, but they didn't know it. They believed they were good. And that was a great strength he had, was taking players and they believed in themselves. He put them to the test. He worked them, and they were, a lot of ways, brainwashed like Marines. They believed in everything we did. It was a oneness that was unbelievable.
Well, it's kind of like Yogi Berra in baseball. What did Yogi used to say? 50% of this game is 90% mental.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure he knew what he meant, but there is so much mental to this game, isn't there?
Well, I don't know about being a good football player at Alabama, like Cornelius was talking about. Coach Bryant never even really talked to me my freshman year. Thank God for Coach Griska. Yeah. Thank you, Coach. I appreciate it. They'd take us an hour before practice, and they took all the superstars like Tony Nathan, moved him up, and the Hannas. They move them all up. David Hanna started in the first Missouri game, so they moved the old big boys up. You know, Sylvester Croom's little brother, Kelvin Croom and stuff. Well, I was a little boy from Pompano Beach, Florida, right? Nobody cared about me, and you know, basically, you did. I appreciate it. That's because you were from Tampa or St. Pete. But we go about an hour before the varsity would come out, and he'd tell you they made up things over there. They beat the crud out of us. You know, it'd be hot. And I remember all of a sudden the varsity'd all come out, and they'd start practicing and stuff like that. Next thing you know, they go, Kraus, get over here. And I said, what? And he goes, put this on. And I go, what's that? And he goes, that's a zoot suit. Anybody know what a zoot suit is? Yeah, you ought to know, Coach. Zoot suits were like catcher's vests. And you hook them on. You got full pads, and you're already soaking wet as a freshman, you know, stuff. Basically, I was meat. Put that on, and then they had this same all the way down. You Velcro out the back. And I go, okay, what do we do? And he goes, well, the whole idea is let the running backs cut you. And I'm going, oh, no. So we started going through the drill, you know, and I'm soaking wet. I've now soaked my whole uniform, and I'm running down. These guys are finally cutting me left and right. And I go, I'm tired of this. So I started making some plays, but then I was trying to figure out, okay, we didn't have water breaks, so I got to get out of this. It was always like, how could I get out? Because remember, the only way we could get water is we put the ice things and suck on the towels, because Coach Bryant wouldn't take breaks. So I remember running over to Coach Goostrey and say, Goostrey, talk like this, you know, and his favorite line was, put some ice on it. Everything had ice on it. Everything was
a great trainer because he invented ice.
Yeah. Bone sticking out. Coach, look. And he goes, put some ice on it. Or else I always had the famous comebacks. Coach, it hurts when I do this. And he goes, well, don't do that. It was my sophomore year, 1976, when we had beaten the team 56-0 or something like that. We came back from Birmingham, and Coach Bryant said we embarrassed 36-6. We came back. We had a special meeting. Coach Bryant just said, "You guys discussed me, and basically just forget about playing any more football because this isn't the way Alabama football should be played." So that night they had curfew, and that was also my sophomore year, which basically I felt like I was doing everything I could to play there, and it just wasn't working out. And I was a tackle on the punt team. I mean, that's where I had number 77. And so, you know, when you get, you know, things aren't working well, things start not working out as well, you start getting down. So this one night we have curfew after this game.
I made curfew.
You made curfew. Well, guess what? I didn't make curfew. I was out with a friend of mine, Skip Ramsey, and we decided to just forget it. You know, we're not playing at Alabama. Who cares, right? And so the next morning we find out we have a scrimmage, right, on Sunday morning, like Snake was talking about coming back. And as it turned out, I went to a coach and I said, so you know, what happened last night? He said, well, you're in a lot of trouble, son. And I said, why? He says, you missed curfew. Now, figure this out. In 4 years I played at Alabama, Coach Bryant checked curfew one night. Guess what night I was out? That one night. So I went to my buddy. So I went to my buddy Marty, and I go, Marty, what do I do? And he goes, I'd hate to be you. Because earlier in the year, or early back in the 60s, whatever, you know, Namath missed curfew. Okay, so I knew that he was a lot better looking than I was, and here I'm a ugly linebacker. So I go up after practice and ask one of the coaches, what should I do? And he says, well, you ought to get Coach Bryant the next morning. So Monday morning, I was there at about 5:30 a.m. waiting for Coach Bryant to walk in. And he came strolling in, and he had a little shuffle, as you probably know. And he moved in. I said, Coach Bryant, can I speak with you? He kind of looked at me with disgust. And so I kind of followed him into his office, sat down. He sat at his table, and I sat in that dang sofa. That sofa, you sink down in it. So immediately I jumped back up, and I'm standing in front of Coach Bryant. And I said, Coach Bryant, I said, I just want to say I'm sorry for missing curfew, and I just feel like, you know, I wanted an opportunity to play for you, but you're not giving it to me. Coach Bryant had his head down. He wasn't looking at me. I said, Coach Bryant, I said I'm sorry. That wasn't getting it done. So next thing I know, I start crying. I said, Coach Bryant, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Coach Bryant. I didn't mean to miss curfew. You know, it's like this, you know. And I'm looking at him with one eye open, and Coach Bryant still isn't looking at me. Now, we talk about athletes taking it to a next level. I took crying to another level. I started jerking all over. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. And I'm in front of Coach Bryant, and all this stuff is flying all over the place by now. And I'm, Coach Bryant, I'm so sorry for breaking curfew. I'm so sorry. I said, if you kick me off a scholarship and kick me out of the door, my mom's going to kill me. Finally, Coach Bryant looks up at me, and he gave me, you know how he talked, he mumbled a little bit, and he said, all right. And I'll interpret it for you. He says, son, you better straighten up. I said, yes, sir, Coach Bryant. And I ran out of that office. Well, I found out my roommate did not go see Coach Bryant. He got kicked off a scholarship, kicked out of the dorm. I kept my scholarship and stayed in the dorm, and I learned something. When you're in a lot of trouble, cry. So later on in the year, we're playing, and we're talking about this Notre Dame thing, okay? I'm going to sit down. The Notre Dame thing. I figured out why Alabama could never beat Notre Dame. And just before the game, you know, you're talking about Coach Bryant really fired up for a Notre Dame game. And I'm standing there, and again, I'm going to be a cheerleader on the sideline, tackle on the punt team. I'm really just nothing down the sideline. But then I looked up through the goalposts in Notre Dame's stadium, and what's up on the side of the Touchdown Jesus. No, I'm serious. He's just like this. And I said, no wonder Alabama could never beat Notre Dame. They had Jesus Christ, and all we had was a bear. So we went in there and before the game, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, it's like we get in there, and everything's quiet, and the referees come in, and they say, you know, we want the starting team. Am I pulling? Okay, well. No, I'm just kidding. No, you aren't.
Some things never change.
It's a personal thing.
It's comforting, yeah, but
some things never change.
Yeah.
Same thing. He was my roommate my senior year.
I kept you out of trouble your senior year.
Yeah, you did keep me out of trouble. I appreciate that very much. Some things never change.
One of the things that I really loved about Coach Perkins is that he had a unique ability to make us feel like we were playing for all of you guys. And when we got ready to play Notre Dame in 1986, he stood up, he told us, I've been thinking about this game for 20 years. They took a national championship from us just because they were Notre Dame. And that's all he said, and we beat the crap out of them.
Exactly. You know, we talk about curfew. We are obviously fortunate today to have one of the legendary curfew coaches with us, Coach Stabler. You talk about taking it to the next level. What did you learn at the university that you carried with you to the NFL in the curfew division?
Well, you know, you play at Alabama. You know, with the people you play for and with, you know, you get the opportunity to play at the next level. You know, and going with the Raiders, and I was the #2 draft choice with the Raiders in 1968, and just play with a great team. I mean, great football team. I played with 4 Hall of Famers on one offense. 4 of us on 4, not one of me, but 4 of them. 2 offensive linemen, Shell, Upshaw, Casper went in this year, and Freddie's in. 4 guys off of the offense in the Hall of Fame. That's a pretty good football team. Pete Banaszak was one of our fullbacks, and Pete's an old training camp story. We used to go to the El Rancho Motel in Santa Rosa, California. It's about 60 miles north of San Francisco. Take over this little motel called the El Rancho, 2 practice fields out back. Back when you played 6 exhibition games, in training camp for 6 weeks, remember that? And so we used to have to go out at night after our meeting. We'd have practice in the afternoon over about 5, and then we'd have a 7:30 until 9 o'clock position meetings. Everybody go with the position coach, and then from 9 to 11 was our time to go socialize and hang out and run the haunts and go do what we do. So we'd do that until 11 o'clock curfew. And then the parking lot at the El Rancho at 11 o'clock is like the first turn at Talladega at 11 o'clock. You can get run over back there. You can get hurt back there. And so anyway, we'd come sliding in there at 11 o'clock and make curfew, but then we'd come fix our beds up and sneak back out. Pete Vanizak was, you know, a real smart fullback. We thought smart player from Miami, great short yardage runner and smart player, never made any mistakes. And so anyway, we'd go in there to make up our beds after that 9 o'clock meeting and go out till 11 o'clock, comes back at 11. Then Pete grabbed in pants and put some toilet paper down in the legs of them and folded them where it looks like there's some feet down there at the bottom, and it's like somebody laying in the bed. And in his haste to get out of there, he grabbed a little lamp off the thing and put it under there, covered it up like there was somebody laying in the bed. So they would come back with like a spot check after 11 o'clock. They'd come back after like 1 o'clock with a spot check. Assistant coach comes back, puts a key in the door, reaches in, flips the light, and the lamp lit up in the bed. Dumbass.
The next level.
Yeah,
That's
they
great.
find us 5,000 and go again.
Tell me this story, Harry. I've heard this, but I'm vague on the details. You were there, I guess, the very first airplane trip the university took.
Yeah,
Is that accurate?
the first trip that the university flew the team to a ball game was 1946, and we were going to Boston to play Boston College. Now, the airplanes were like C-47s. Back then, the plane you'd ride in, and they wouldn't carry a full team.
It was a small plane.
And so we had a tackle that was a very, very good player and a very intense person, but we really thought he was a little wacky. His name was Charlie Compton. He was a war hero. He didn't have an ounce of fat on his body. He was played tackle, offense and defense. The leanest, best conditioned athlete you've ever seen in your life. He got all kind of medals and awards in the service. He supposedly volunteered to pull a string of small boats tied together that we needed to get our troops across the river. And something happened that the boats got turned loose. So in a shallow part of the river, he's rounding up the boats and he ties them back together and hangs on to them over his shoulder and starts walking up close to the bank so he can touch the bottom. And he pulls this string of thing back under fire. And they're shooting at him. So he winds up getting all of the awards. Then after his army is over, he comes back to school, and he's going to play his senior year out with us. Now, we had just had an undefeated season the year before, so we thought we were a pretty good team, and here comes this stud, man, I'm telling you. That really looked the part and was a good player, too. He was odd with his personality, though. He heard the coach announce that this would be the team's first trip on an airplane. Well, after that meeting was over, he goes up to Coach Thomas, and nobody really just walked up to Coach Thomas and started talking, but he did. He walked up to Coach Thomas and he says, Coach, I don't fly. And he says, what do you mean you don't fly? He said, well, I don't ride in airplanes. Coach Thomas says, this is going to be the first time the team ever had a chance to ride an airplane. I don't fly. So you better let me get on the train Wednesday. And I can get on up there ahead of y'all, and I'll be there, when y'all get there. Coach Thomas says, we can't have you splitting off away from the team like that. Well, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't fly. Coach Thomas says, well, let's think about that for a little bit. You were a brave guy in the service, got all those honors. What if what if we gave you a parachute? He said, you wouldn't hesitate to jump out? He said, no. No. Well, we'll give you a chute, and you don't even have to wear it where the others can see it. You can just slide it under your seat. And then if there's some trouble, you can get that chute and put it on. And he says, well, no, I don't know. He looked up, no, I'm not going to do it. And Coach Thomas says, I don't understand. You're brave enough, and you could handle that. He says, no, I know that as soon as this plane got in some difficulty, you would come running to me and say, get that chute and give it to Gilmer.
Isn't he the one my dad played with? And he's the one that in the Georgia game, he split open his cheek. And he sat on the sideline and sewed his own cheek up to play. And then he got a Charlie horse and wouldn't even play because he couldn't play with the Charlie horse. Is that the same guy?
He was chasing some back out of bounds, and as the guy went out of bounds, his heel came up, and it cut him just above his kneecap. But it gashed him open. And so he reaches out. He's just about 2 yards in bounds, and he's on our sideline. He reaches out, gets a handful of grass, and pulls his body forward and gets himself off the playing field. So he gets up there, and he sits on the bench, and they get there, and the trainers, he would let the trainers do anything for him. So he kind of cleans it off himself, see? And he looks at it, and he gets moving his knee around, and those of us, that are expecting him something funny. So in a little bit, he gets up and he walks, and he realizes he can still walk. So he goes back over to the coach, and before he can say anything to the coach just points on the field, so in he goes. So he goes back in there, and he plays for just a couple more plays. And something else happened to him. Somebody hit him, and when he came off, he sat down and refused to go back anymore. And later, when he was asked about it, he says, well, a man can only take so much.
Eli, I need to add to that because Charlie, of course, was older, back from the service. I'm a sophomore. I'm just 17 and a half, 18 years old, and we're playing. I forget who it was, but he comes out of the game and kneels down and says, manager, give me a pair of pliers. Of course, back then we had cleats that, you could either tighten or change them or something. But, we all thought he was going to make an equipment change or something. He took them damn pliers and pulled that damn tooth out. No sedative or no nothing except 3 or 4 guys are scared to death. I can see Fortunata and DeMonico and myself. We said, oh, hell.
He's jogged my memory now in that was the second injury, that he got hit in the mouth and it broke his tooth off, or broke a bridge and it left part of it still in there. And he asked the trainer for the pliers out of the one you tighten your cleats with. He wanted the pliers, so he breaks that off in there and pulls it out, gets a little water and spits it out. And then that was too much. He decided then that's too much.
With all the great players we've got in this studio right now, there's only one guy in here who was voted by the fans, the same people who are enjoying this video, as the man who made the single biggest play, most important play in the history of Legion Field in Birmingham. Old Thunderfoot over there who's been sitting
You
quietly.
believe that came from a kicker? That don't seem hardly fair, does it?
That must have been a heck of an honor, huh?
It was. Yeah, that was unbelievable. I mean, to think that something like that could happen, like I said, to a kicker, somebody who perhaps doesn't have the most brutal job on the field, but there is one thing that is tough about that, and that's you only have one chance, you know.
Take me through that whole deal when Shula was moving the team up the field there in that last series. What goes through? You know, I'm guessing I'm sitting there saying, "Oh gosh, you guys score. I don't want the pressure," but obviously that didn't bother you.
Well, you know, I know Cornelius had a great tackle there.
Did I?
There toward the end, and we got the ball back, and we start back up the field, and it's looking pretty hopeless because Shula gets sacked right off the bat. And so I'm thinking, well, there's no problem. Except there's two drunk guys behind me that's reminding me, hey, it's going to come down to you. And I think, now, two guys that's totally out of their mind know more about what's going on here than anybody else, you know, or myself. And I thought, well, there's no way to come down to that. But then, you know, the next play, I believe, was the reverse to Al Bell, and it just started looking a little more hopeful. And you know, as a kicker, you want the opportunity to make a last-second field goal. That's the dream any kicker would have, but you don't want it to be 52 yards. You know, you want it to be something a little more.
Into the wind.
And into the wind, that's right. You want it to be something a little more reasonable. But it just, you know, it happened quickly, you know, and got on down, and Greg Richardson caught the pass, and he made it out of bounds. And we didn't know for sure if he made it out of bounds, so we were in the hurry-up field goal there. And that was good, you know, because there's not a lot of time to think and ponder on it.
There is the snap, the kick. It is in the air. It has distance. It's good! It's good! It's good! It's good! It's good! It's good! Van Tiffin has won the ball game. Alabama has beaten Auburn. Van Tiffin has kicked a 52-yard field goal, and the state of Alabama is crimson.
Van, have you ever thought what we'd have done to you if you'd missed that?
I tell you, I haven't told too many people this, but I was thinking that as I was getting ready to kick the ball. You know, a kicker can dash the expectations of an offensive football team in a hurry by one single play, and sure didn't want that to happen at that time.
I was a freshman in that game, and I remember about 2 series before that, Gene runs the 74-yard, and I'm like, thank you, Lord. I mean, we're going to do all right. Then they march it right back down and score. And I remember praying on the sideline.
You got a penalty, too, by the way.
Wes, we're not going to talk about me right now. I said, Lord, if you got one more miracle in you. And as I said, Lord, if you got one more miracle, I hear this sound. Boom! And it was Van hitting the ball. And you could hear it over 80,000 people. We knew it was good. And that was the only time Mike Shula ever beat Wes Neighbors running. Running down the
field. You knew it the second you kicked it, it was...
Yeah, well, you know, it was almost like an out-of-body experience. Yeah. It really was. It was, thinking back on it, it was just really strange. But, you know, it was just a situation, I suppose. They made it seem that way. I could try that kick again 100 times and probably never made it. It was just really a fortunate situation.
How about the goal line stand? We've not talked about that at all.
The Krausian moment.
It's a long time ago, wasn't it?
It's all right. It still lives on.
Yes, sir. What do you want to know? I mean, where do you want me to pick it up?
Wherever you'd like. I mean, just tell us about the whole scenario.
I'll tell you, it was, you know, it's your dream is for 4 years you play at the University of Alabama. You're playing a great program. You have the chance to play a #1 ranked team in the country. We were ranked #2. And the year before, we had played Ohio State. And the year before that, I think we had beat Ohio State, and we were ranked 2 in the country. And Notre Dame beat Texas and Earl Campbell and went from 5th to 1st and won a national championship. So we're going into this game saying, man, we're seniors, Marty and all the guys, Murray and everything else, we're playing this game, and this game means a lot. So the score is 14-7. Alabama fumbles, and Penn State takes the ball over. and drives down. And everybody remembers my play, or our play, but Don McNeil makes the play. He makes that. He's got man-to-man, I think, in the end zone. And they ran a little quick out, and McNeil actually came up and made an incredible, awesome tackle that actually he went parallel to the goal line and took him on out of bounds.
Tell us about your part, then we'll pick back up with Barry.
I was covering my man, and he ran a little down and in the end zone. Didn't have much room there. And at the corner of my eye, I saw them throw the ball to, I think Murray Lake was covering this guy, and I think Murray got picked or something. And it's just I saw it, and it's just reaction play, like you said, just reaction play. I went up, and it just happened for you. I made the tackle, drove him out of bounds, and I heard my roommate, my roommate was Curtis McGriff. He said, man, that was a heck of a play. But I didn't know that at that particular time. I'm just playing football, what Bill Oliver told us to do all the time, and I was just playing football. So I didn't know it was a bigger play at that time, but it's one of the bigger plays in my life.
It was huge. Pick it back up. This is the pressure.
Anyway, he
and
makes
the
this great play, and there was another play where they tried to run it up in the gut again on 3rd down, and then they called timeout, and that's the famous timeout that somebody said something to the quarterback, and I'm not quite sure who did. Who did do Marty?
It was Marty.
Who was it, Marty?
Well, I had just come back from the Bob Hope show with Chuck Pacino, and we were over there, and he was looking in to see how far it was. Oh, yeah, I'm trying to set the stage. I was picking up where you left off. And, Chuck just looked at me and he says, well, what do you think we should do? A casual comment, and I said, I think you should throw the ball. And it happened that quick. And then, Barry, you can pick up now.
And then we get back in the huddle. Thank you. I thought it was pass anyhow, not throw.
Okay.
Pass. Your vocabulary's changed over the years.
Okay.
But we get back in the huddle, and we knew it was 4th down and inches or whatever, 4th down an inch, and everything kind of got in there. And we all held hands. And it was all about coming together and everything. It's just everything that we wanted and prayed about, and that's what you want. I mean, you want it on the line. And Coach Bryant, this is the way it was supposed to happen. And so when they came out, it was just like we didn't know where they were going to go with it. Are they going to run a sweep, or are they going to go out, pass, or whatever? So I got kind of deep. And again, as I was reminded when I saw Ken Donahue as our defensive line coach, which has passed away, he's a heck of a coach. He reminded me, he says, those defensive linemen on that snap did a great job of, reestablishing the line of scrimmage. And basically he just cut back into me, and I hit him. And it's kind of like we just had to do whatever it took to get it done. We quote unquote, we talk about it's called a gut check. It's about, are we going to get it done? We have this opportunity, man. It was just fantastic. And after I hit him, I really didn't do much. I mean, when I hit him, I pinched a nerve in my neck, and I actually broke a chip off of my helmet. And I didn't know whether we stopped him or not. I mean, I was there, and I was kind of holding him, and the next thing you know, Murray Leg, I guess, pushed us over. And so I'm laying there, and Marty's there, and I didn't know if we stopped him.
Yeah, I picked him up off the ground. I wanted to make sure he was okay, so I picked him up off the ground and said, you know what, we finally did it. We won the national championship, but I think it was a great team effort, coaching staff. We were well prepared going into the game. And for those of us that had an opportunity to play for a guy like Ken Donahue, he would be there night after night, day after day, running the tapes over and over and over and over again. It was like a religion to him. And I think for the defensive linemen, we owe a lot to Coach Donahue because he pushed us. He pushed us to our limits. He knew, his expectations for us sometimes were greater than our own. And he made sure that, defensive linemen were the first people out on the field and the last people off the field. And I know that I owe a great deal to him for just the fundamentals that he taught you.
I roomed with Curtis McGriff, and Curtis McGriff used to talk about Ken Donahue all the time. Curtis McGriff used to come in the room, he'd be so tired after practice. And then Curtis lay down, and all this grass is over his behind because of Coach Donahue. Coach Donahue has put him through the mill. And Curtis McGriff would talk about Coach Donahue all the time. He was a great coach, strategized, and knew exactly what to do in tough situations.
Coach Donahue was a guy who, when you first met him, you learned to hate him real quick.
Yeah.
Didn't we, Marty? He was a guy that before you got to know him, you wondered what was going on in that head, because he was definitely a different kind of guy. Probably to this day had the most pure agenda of any man I've ever met. He was all about making us the best we could be. And you're talking about coming off the field, Marty and I and anybody that played for him from a defensive line point of view knows what it was like to work for him coming off the field. The thing that helped make him special, though, is, and I don't know if you ever experienced this, Marty, but it was a pretty common experience for me to have somebody at my door at 4 o'clock in the morning knocking on my door because I'd missed a couple classes. And what was it, 25 laps
I
per
never
class?
missed class.
You never-
I didn't go through that I never experienced that.
And the man
See,
never
he's still
cursed.
covering his butt.
Coach Donahue never cursed. It was, well, we never heard him curse. Well, what I remember about Coach Donahue was, gosh darn you, Baumhauer. Gosh darn you, Baumhauer. Gosh darn you,
And
Marty
the
Lyons.
big old fishing hat.
And the big old fishing
If you
hat.
guys got in a fight in
But-
practice? Remember
No,
what
I
you
never
would
got in a
always
fight with
say?
him.
Remember
That was
what he
Marty.
always
Wasn't
say?
that you,
Put
Marty?
the gloves on.
Yeah.
I always want to fight. Put the gloves on.
But Coach Donahue would be at your room 4:30 in the morning, knocking on your door, and you'd turn up the TV or you'd do whatever you had to do so you couldn't hear him, but he'd wear you out. He wouldn't go away till you came to the door. And he took you over to the Coliseum, and it was either 5 laps or 25 laps for every class that you missed.
He just kept running.
You just kept running, and he'd have his little desk out there with, doing his plays. And then every so often, when you got on the other side of the concourse, you'd walk. Every so often, he'd sneak around over there. Get your butt back over there, running right there, But
Coach Donahue wasn't just that strict with the football players. Coach Donahue was probably the purest man that I've ever known. He treated everybody with the same fairness. He didn't have any special things. Coach Donahue was right down the line with everybody.
Coach Donahue, he recruited me. And people said I must have really wanted to come to the university if I committed under Coach Donahue. Because he was. And up until, I guess until his health failed him, he would either write me or he came over to the Falcons complex when I was playing for the Atlanta Falcons to visit me a couple of times. I mean, he was.
Let me tell you what happened. He passed away. I went to the funeral, I think, was it last year? When was it?
Almost 2 years ago.
2 years ago, went up to his funeral in Tennessee. He passed away. He was working out when he passed away. His health was still there.
I know, because he used to outrun the line.
He'd outrun all of us, And then what they were talking about is, anytime you want to put on the gloves, bring it on, man. And
I saw him take you and Charlie Hannon one time.
Yeah, he'd take me, Charlie, anybody else that wanted to go along.
He was serious. He was punching him in the face and all.
Yeah.
But do you remember when we beat Tennessee? What would happen with Ken Donahue? What would he do? I mean, he'd never smile.
Well, I remember the
we
cigars.
beat Tennessee in Tennessee. What would he do?
He'd be dancing.
He'd get up on a table and dance.
Yeah.
And this man has never
Yeah, he played at the University of Tennessee, and then he moved back to Tennessee when he retired.
Kurt Jarvis, we started going rabbit hunting at my cousin's farm down the way in Foster's, and I think Tommy went with us a couple of times also. But his old saying would be, don't shoot anybody with any eligibility.
Eli, let me tell you one more thing about Coach Donahue, because I think he deserves it. I told you that when you first met him, I mean, there was definitely
a dislike,
not a warm relationship there.
Well, usually you met him after you had Dude for a while. Yeah. And when Dude got fed up with you,
but I want to
he
tell
threw
you
you to
something.
Donahue.
Before I left the University of Alabama, and then even more so after I went on, after I left the University of Alabama, I mean, I grew to love that man. And some of y'all were talking about the bond that we have. It was guys like Coach Donahue and Coach Moore and Coach Rutledge and Coach Griska, Coach Hennessy that and it continues on right now. I think Mike's bringing that back. I think Coach Shula's going to bring that back. But that's what makes us special. Coach Bryant used to talk about we're special. And it was Coach Donahue, I think, that, like you're talking about, epitomized that with his pure agenda. He was all about being the best.
He used to come back Tennessee week. When we were there, he'd come back Tennessee week and break down film for the coaches. He loved it. I mean, he loved it. He'd be like, man, Coach Donahue's here, you know? He'd see him in there breaking down the film.
Hey,
It was awesome.
Eli, a real tribute to Coach Donahue. When he passed away, Bob and all of his teammates and everything, there was about 25 folks that he coached at the funeral. And there was about 10 or 12 of his teammates. Mal Moore got the plane, and about 6 or 8 of us flew up due for the funeral. So the service is going to start. So we kind of walk out back, and Philip Fulmer and Doug Dickey and all of them, Haywood Sullivan, they were commenting about, you know, how well Coach Ken played up there and coached and everything. And we were just kind of talking about how great he was and everything. And the young man standing over there, he said, Coach Fulmer, well, that's a good-looking ring you got there. And he, what is it? Fulmer said, well, championship ring. And the guy said, wow, can I see it? Fulmer said, sure. About where Tommy said, and he took it off and they passed it around. What year? He said, 1998. I'm real innocent. I'm standing here like this. There's a guy about where Dwight and Jack are, and they say, hey, Coach Griska, that's a good-looking ring you got there. I said, well, thank you. Is that a championship ring? I said, yeah, sure is. Can I see it? I said, sure. He said, what year? I said, we've got 7 of them, and I don't know which one I put on.
And now, of course, the total is up to 12, and you guys had let's talk about the 92 season and the Sugar Bowl of 1993. That was...
well, I just want to say something about Donahue.
Oh, sure, please.
I want to say something about Donahue. We was, well, I got the utmost respect for Donahue because I always had the utmost respect for the crazy man I ever dealt with in football was Mike Dubose. I mean, I thought this guy was a demon. You know what I mean? I was like, Mike, he was just very competitive and stayed out there. Anyway, one day, we was in practice and Dubose never, ever stops in the middle of practice or whatever. So, so we was doing some drills. He said, hey, he talks with a Cajun voice. I want you young else to start right now. And he looks around. He said, see that man right there? That's the toughest man walking on earth right there. I said, who? And the old man came walking on a little crew. He said, that's Donahue. So you want to put some gloves on and go out there and get him? I was like, if you talking about going and putting the gloves on and go get him? I was like, no, I'm not going to get him. He said, you know something? That's the meanest snake on earth right there.
You do a pretty good Dubose.
That's pretty good, yeah.
Anybody got coached by Dubose can do a good Dubose.
I mean, I'll be here all day talking about Dubose. I mean, John was going to have his little points about Dubose, but that man right there, that was, my father figure on the football field, because he pretty much made me and molded me to be the, that pass rusher that I was, or just to have the attitude I had on the football field. But
I think what Dubose did for the defense, he coached them, but he had all of us. I mean, we would do drills, and you're like, man, I'm sorry, y'all fool with Dubose. It's crazy.
Once after a point with Dubose is you know you're gonna die. You just don't know when. What part of practice, you know it's gonna be rough. Yeah.
Hey, who coached Coach Dubose?
Donahue.
I think Coach Hennessy. I think Coach Hennessy had a big hand in that too. Oh yeah.
We used to be the first ones on the field, and the last ones to leave the field.
Yeah.
And we used to have open dates, right? Open dates. You think he's gonna have a couple of days off. So most of the time I'm scared to even go to. I'm in my sleep like this right here because I know I got to go face Dubose in the morning, right? I'm like, God, I don't want to go see that man in the morning. But anyway, I think I don't know if we played good that Saturday or whatever. We could beat somebody 38-0, but Dubose still gonna find some flaws in your game, right? So we came down open date. And boy, Dubose came in there hot. Boy, people in there trembling. The day before, right? He said, let me tell you something. Stallings might thought y'all MLs played good, but tomorrow, you better change your shoes. Because I'm going to run you and run you and run you. And for some of you, I'm going to send some of you home on the Greyhound.
It's halftime. But when we return to the third quarter, we'll talk about the '92 team and hear some recruitment stories from the legends of Alabama football.